You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, March 19th show. Each week I share expert advice and inside knowledge on how today's events in our local economy can affect your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but you can always call into the show at 1-855-400-1150, 1-855-400-1150, or go online at themoneyhour.com, and I'll get you connected with any of the guests that I have in studio, or always love listening from all of my listeners on topic suggestions and things and guests you'd like me to bring in for my hour with you. Right now in studio, I'm going to have a conversation with Anton Cauthorn with Reed Longyear Law Group, and we're going to be talking today about estate planning and taxes. Great to have you back, Anton.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. It's great to be back.
Always love that word, taxes. He loves paying those taxes.
Yeah, not the most exciting term for most people.
Yeah. So a little bit about Anton. He's a regular guest in studio, and he is my expert in everything regarding estate planning, which is so important. I think that's an area, there's procrastination in everything when we do regarding our financing, but I think this is an area that has extra procrastination, and it's important not to do that, to make sure that your family is protected. And that's what this show is about, is a better quality of life for you and your family. Anton's been working in areas of estate planning and estate tax planning for the last 5 years. He holds a law degree for University of San Diego and master's tax law for University of Washington. Anton focuses his practice on estate planning, tax planning, and small business planning. He is a member of the Washington State Bar Estate and Gift Tax Committee. So let's go ahead and start out with the taxes related to estate planning. Anton, can you break that down for my listeners?
Yeah, so Benjamin Franklin back in 1789 famously said, "In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes."
Yeah.
And the same is true today. Taxes aren't gone, and we haven't figured out how to avoid death yet. So we're stuck with both of those for now. And estate planning actually involves a lot of the intersection of those two things, death and taxes. And it's kind of surprising to most people. Most people think estate planning, and they think, where do things go when I pass away? Who's going to be in charge? And that's it. But that's not really it. There's a lot of complexity involved with estate planning, especially with taxes. And there's quite a few different taxes that can be involved. And people are often surprised at how many taxes they need to plan for and think about. So there's a federal estate tax. We also have a federal gift tax and a federal generation skipping tax.
Okay.
On top of that, we've got a Washington estate tax. And all of those taxes can stack on top of each other. So you can end up with quite a few taxes on the same dollar of your estate. Once you pass away, you can get a federal estate tax, federal generation skipping tax, and a Washington estate tax.
So we have to add a Washington in there as well.
Yep. So you can get all of those depending on the size of your estate.
Okay.
And those aren't the only taxes. You can also end up with a lot of income tax issues related to estate planning. So when someone passes away, you're not done paying your income taxes. You still have a last year of life income tax return. And then even once you're gone, your estate, they may have income in your estate, and they may have to do an income tax return for your estate. And if you created any trust during your lifetime at your death, they also may have tax returns. So there's quite a few tax issues related to estate planning once you're alive, and also once you pass away. So if you're going to do a comprehensive estate plan, you can't limit it just to who gets what when you pass away. You also have to include the idea of, how am I going to plan for taxes? Which taxes do I need to plan for? And who do I need to talk to make sure I know how to plan for those taxes?
It's so important. If you're listening right now, just imagine if you're a father or a mother and something happens to you, and what's left for the remaining family, not only to deal with the death of a loved one, but also now to pick up the pieces because the estate planning was not put into place. I'm really passionate about this topic, and just appreciate, Anton, having you here so much. So what should people do to make sure that their estate has proper tax planning?
Well, the first and the most easy solution is talk with an attorney who knows about taxes and estate planning. I mean, that's the best way to do it. If you try to go out there and do this on your own, you're likely to miss details, make mistakes, and mess things up. So really just go out there, find an attorney that you're comfortable with, an attorney you like, and that has the knowledge in the area that you need, which again is estate planning and tax planning, because that attorney can walk you through the entire process. And really part of the goal is to make sure you talk with an attorney who gives you the information you need to understand your options. And so you can weigh the positives and the negatives to each type of planning you may do, because you may not be able to achieve all of your goals. That attorney can give you the knowledge to know which solution will be the best solution for you.
Yeah, and you may be listening thinking, well, gosh, isn't an attorney going to be expensive? Well, it's going to cost money, but think how expensive it's going to be without an attorney. So what kind of costs are associated, Anton, to hire an attorney, a tax attorney, to assist with? proper advice?
That's a question many people have. They think, well, do I really need to talk to an attorney, especially an estate planning attorney, a tax attorney? It's going to cost me a lot of money. People are afraid of that hourly billing. They're afraid, every minute they're on the clock, they're getting another dollar out of their pocket. And so that's one of those things that stops people from doing estate planning. But the answer is, it's almost more expensive to not do the estate planning. And I've seen this in many situations. People want to do DIY, do-it-yourself estate planning, and they go out there, they put together a plan, and they have all kinds of goals. They've heard all these different things about estate planning, like I have to avoid probate, I have to avoid Medicaid payback. And so they have these ideas, and they try to plan around it without the knowledge of the tax law. And these can create huge, costly mistakes. One of the very common ones that I see is people, for some reason, either Medicaid planning, probate avoidance, or estate tax avoidance, they gift property to their children. And often the thing they gift is their home. So they have owned a residence for the last 40 years. They paid $50,000 to the residence. It's now worth $500,000. The thing people aren't thinking about are capital gains taxes.
Yeah.
So capital gains taxes are tax, essentially it's the difference between purchase price and sale price when you sell the property. So your initial purchase price, difference between that and the sale price, you're going to pay a tax rate of 15 to 23.8% on that.
Yeah.
If you gift that property to somebody else, and people often do that, they're going to get the same starting point for their capital gains as you had, which means if you purchased for $50,000, well, when they sell that property, it's as if they purchased it for $50,000 originally. Now, if you hold on to property until you die, though, all capital gains are completely wiped out. So they get the property as if they had purchased it at the date of death value.
Wow.
So they've got zero capital gains. And this is the common mistake I see people. They gift away the property to their children or someone else to avoid probate, estate taxes. Well, they've also gifted the capital gains back to the government because when their children sell that property, now they have huge taxes. So that $50,000 property that's now worth $500,000, the children sell it, and now they have up to $100,000 of extra capital gains that they didn't need to pay if the parents have just held onto the property, if they had had proper estate planning ahead of time to know what they were doing. So it's very important. And in this case, the cost of an attorney would have been far, far less than the cost of the mistake they made with the capital gains taxes.
And I'm having a conversation here for 13 minutes or my time with Anton, and this is just one example. So we could have an entire show with all the examples of what you could get stuck with by not having the right advice. And what about if let's say that there are tax issues, and what situations that they would be in tax issues that they would actually then at that time talk with an attorney?
Yeah, it's hard to give a full list of everything that you need to talk about, but there are certain situations where somebody should always think about talking to their attorney. The first one is doing any sort of gifting. Whether or not it's giving your house away to your children or just giving up large amounts of assets, anytime you want to do gifting, talk to your attorney. Of course, Christmas gifts, small birthday gifts, you don't have to worry about it there. But it's when you're giving larger gifts to family members, friends, or anybody else. And the reason is there can be numerous tax issues, gift tax issues, loss of capital gains basis step up like we already talked about. So when you're thinking about doing gifting, talk to that attorney, make sure they help you out with the plan, make sure it's structured properly.
Makes sense. So is gifting a property a good idea? You're like a home?
Yeah, it can.
To avoid paying the taxes?
It can be a good idea in certain situations. So it can be difficult to know when to do it if you don't talk to the attorney.
Okay.
So it depends on your goals, depends on the size of your estate, whether or not it would be a good idea to gift property down to your children or other beneficiaries. If you have a large estate, in some cases, it can be a good idea to gift property down to your children. Other cases, though, it can be a bad idea. So the Washington estate tax starts out 10%. So you get 10% on the first million in the Washington estate tax. Well, capital gains rates are 15%. Again, if you gift property down to your children and they're going to face higher capital gains, the capital gains rates could exceed the estate tax rate.
Okay.
So you need to talk to that attorney and maybe even work with a financial advisor at the same time to take a look at the whole picture and see what makes the most financial sense when you're going to think about gifting property to children or other beneficiaries.
So reaching into the pool of people that you have helping in all areas regarding your financing. So what type of planning can be done to reduce estate taxes, Anton?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of planning out there that you can do in order to reduce estate taxes. Some of the more common things, if you're married, everybody has an exemption of $2 million. If you don't do any planning ahead of time, you can waste the first spouse to die exemption. The most common thing people do is they say when the first spouse dies, put the assets into a trust that can hold the first spouse's $2 million exemption.
Okay.
It's a pretty simple technique. Most people do it. As you get larger estates, there's more gifting planning that people will end up doing. And there's a lot of these 4-letter acronyms people use for these types of planning. There's GRATs, CRATs, CLATs, IDGTs, ILETs, these fancy names for techniques that your attorney can talk to you about. One of the common ones people use, the ILET, Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust.
Yep.
It's a tool you can use if you want to make sure your life insurance isn't included as part of your estate. Very, very common tool for people to use. But all of these tools can be used together, and it's important to talk to the attorney to make sure you know which ones work for you. You don't want to have an estate plan where you try to use all of these. You don't have the shotgun approach of, I'm going to use every tool. It doesn't work that way. You want to make sure you have one that's tooled to your estate and it works with what you have in your life and it accomplishes your goals.
Makes total sense. So what should a listener worry about with income taxes when it comes to estate planning?
Yeah, the common thing out there are retirement plans. So retirement plans are income deferred plans. And one of the other mistakes people make is they don't do beneficiary planning with those. And the big benefit you have with retirement plans beyond your own retirement is when you pass away, if you name a beneficiary, they can get deferred tax benefits just like you did. So if you name your surviving spouse as a beneficiary of your IRA or your 401k, they can roll it over to their own account. If you name your children, grandchildren, or somebody else a beneficiary, they can get something called an inherited IRA that allows them to defer taxes over their lifetime. If you do improper planning, though, it can cause all the taxes to be paid within 5 years after you pass away, which is a huge income tax hit. So you want to make sure with income taxes, you want to plan for your beneficiary designations on your retirement accounts.
Okay. So, Anton, I've heard that life insurance isn't taxable. So does that mean that we don't need to worry about tax planning when it comes to life insurance?
Yeah, and actually, you're exactly right that life insurance isn't income taxable, but there's a big myth out there that life insurance isn't taxable at all. Well, it's part of your taxable estate for estate tax purposes. And it's one of those things that many people miss. Many people forget that they've got a life insurance policy out there, and maybe it's an accidental policy. You may have a dangerous job, and if you pass away on the job during an accident, you could have a huge payout. And so with Washington's $2 million exemption, that life insurance policy could be something that could push you above that exemption and cause estate taxes.
Wow.
So if you do have life insurance, you want to make sure you talk to your attorney to see if you need to do some sort of planning like that ILIT that I talked about earlier, the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust.
Okay.
Because that's a tool you can use to move life insurance out of your estate. So it's just an important thing for people to know.
Okay, so for my listeners in planning for a death of a loved one, what would you tell them to do?
When you have a loved one pass away, the important thing to do is to get together a team of people who can assist you with the process of negotiating what happens after someone passes away. The common people you're going to want to have in this team is 1, your estate planning attorney who understands the tax law. 2, you're going to want an accountant. And 3, you're probably going to want a financial planner. So the estate planning attorney is the one who can guide you through the laws, make sure you're following all the laws that you need to follow, make sure you're filing the right paperwork, making sure you're not going to get in trouble legally. They can also help you with some of the tax issues, and they're going to work with the accountant. So the accountant and the tax attorney will work together to make sure you've made the right decisions, because there's some elections you can make after somebody passes away that can have a tax impact, and you want to make sure you've got that team approach to that. Along with that, the accountant's going to help you filing those income tax returns. Now, during your lifetime, you may have filed your own tax returns, but when someone passes away, it's time to get professional help because things get more complicated. So you want to go out there and make sure you have an accountant helping you with that.
Now, I know of what we've talked before, but I want to bring it up since we're talking about when loved ones pass away. What about when your spouse passes away and you own real estate?
Yeah, if your spouse passes away and you own real estate, one of the big things you want to make sure you do is talk to the attorney. It's very common, and one problem I often see. Spouse passes away and everyone assumes Washington's a community property state. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to worry about it. That's not true. If you don't do anything, you may have the problem of the spouse ends up not owning the whole property. So if you're the surviving spouse, you only own half the real estate unless you've done something to transfer your deceased spouse's real estate into your name. So you want to make sure you talk to the attorney to do that. The problem I often see is somebody comes to me, they lost their spouse 10, 20 years ago, and they say, I'm trying to sell my real estate, but they say my deceased spouse's name on the title. Can you just take it off for me real quick? My answer usually is, we're going to have to go through a probate, and that's not going to be a quick process. It's going to be a few weeks at the earliest, if not a few months before you can do this. So talk to the attorney as soon as you lose your spouse. Make sure you take care of it ahead of time, because you don't want to be about to sign the paperwork and find out you can't sign it without doing that probate.
Exactly. So taxes, the laws change all the time. And so why is it important for my listeners to plan for taxes in their estate right now, even though they could change with the upcoming elections?
Yeah, this is a common question that I get from my clients. They say, why should I even bother planning? We may end up with a new party in the White House, and next thing you know, we're going to have no estate taxes, or these taxes are going to completely change. Well, the issue is none of us know when we're going to die, and we know the laws are right now. And if you don't do any planning for it right now, if something happens, it doesn't work for you. The plan's not set up, and it's going to fail. And who knows, the laws could stay exactly as they are for 10 or 20 years before you have the drastic change, and you want to make sure your plan's set up to work now. If things do change in the future, we can create a new plan at that time, but it's unlikely there's going to be drastic changes without at least some sort of warning to give you the time to plan ahead. So plan now, plan in the laws that we have, and when things do change, we can make the updates, because if you don't plan, you're guaranteed to fail and you don't have a path to success. It
makes total sense. So like anybody else on your financial wealth team, your financial planner, your licensed CPA, your estate planner, they're all really, really important to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do. And so when your clients, Anton, how often do you encourage your clients to check in with you and to make sure that everything is all up to date?
Yeah, usually every 3 to 5 years, or if you have a major life event, marriage, divorce, birth, death in the family, anything like that, that's the time to come back and check with your estate planning attorney. And there may be no changes. Everything may be the same, but it's just a good idea to go talk to them, because that gives you the peace of mind of knowing everything's working. And when it comes to estate planning, peace of mind is why you do it, because you're gone when everything comes into effect.
Exactly.
So if you want to have that peace of mind, just do that check-in occasionally to make sure it really is going to continue working.
Makes total sense. Anton, thank you so much for joining me back in studio. Always appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
And that is the show for today. This is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and Saturday, depending on what day you're listening to the show. And I will be here same time, same place next Saturday right here at 11:50 a.m. KKNW.